I didn't ask for a parade, just a quiet moment, some cake, a handful of people, and the dim hum of music that wouldn't drown out a heartbeat. I was about to become a father. That still felt strange to say out loud, father. I had practiced the word in my head, rolled it around like a pebble in my mouth. I didn't feel ready, but I was doing it. On my own. So I decided to throw something small. A modest get-together in my apartment's common room. Streamers, homemade canapes, a cake with little booties on top. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. I paid for everything myself. Food, decor, the pastel invitations with Baby Harper written in loopy fonts. I even dusted every inch of my living space the day before, wiped down the baseboards with vinegar, lit candles to cover the scent of musty carpet. My back hurt the entire time, but I didn't ask for help. I never do. They started arriving around 2. Uncle Tony brought a box of organic baby wipes and told me, "You'll use these more than your own toothbrush." My cousin Beth handed me a stuffed owl and smiled like I was the first man she ever saw who wanted to raise a child alone. Then came Claire, and Claire never enters quietly. She wore a Stanford hoodie, even though it was 80 degrees, red lipstick, loud laugh. I noticed she wasn't alone. 2 of her high school friends trailed behind her, giggling and filming everything on their phones. "Where should I put this?" Claire asked, holding up a sealed envelope with a smirk. Before I could respond, she handed it to my mother Marla, who tapped her wine glass with a fork like she was at a wedding. "Everyone, may I have your attention?" Marla cooed. She was already smiling. Not the warm kind of smile. The kind that arrives right before someone says, "This isn't about you anymore." I remember holding my ginger tea like it was anchoring me to the floor. My sister stood in the center of the room, arms open, already basking in the applause that hadn't yet begun. "I got in," she said. "Stanford. Full ride." The room exploded. It happened fast. Applause, cheers, a few gasps. Uncle Tony actually dropped the wipes. Marla started crying. Claire's friends clapped like they'd just witnessed a marriage proposal. No one said it out loud, but it didn't have to be spoken. The air shifted, like a room breathing someone else's name. The playlist I had curated, soft acoustic songs meant to lull my future daughter to sleep, was drowned out within minutes. Claire's friend yanked a Bluetooth speaker out of her tote and started blasting bass-heavy music. Something with so much synth that made the floor buzz. I was still standing next to the snack table, still wearing the cheap satin ribbon someone had pinned to my chest that said "Dad to be." No one noticed. The baby gifts were moved off the main table to make room for chips and soda. Someone placed a sticky bottle of orange Fanta next to the cake I'd picked out, chocolate with raspberry filling, her favorite flavor when she was still with me. The Fanta tipped. A fizz trail slid down the frosting, making it look like the cake had started to cry. I grabbed a napkin, knelt down to catch the spill. I was 8 months into this new life, becoming a single parent, trying to do everything right, and there I was, on my knees, cleaning frosting off the tile, while people stepped over me to hug Claire. No one said, "Excuse me." Marla leaned against the wall, telling some distant relative how they'd hired 3 tutors for Claire this past year, how they always knew she was destined for something greater. She never mentioned the part where I helped pay for those tutors, where my freelance income had quietly funded Claire's second SAT attempt. I heard my father, David, telling Claire's friends that she had always been the brilliant one. He used to tell me college was a scam. When I was 16 and asked about applying, he told me to get a job at the grocery store. So I did. I scrubbed floors while Claire studied on a laptop they gifted her for Christmas. That day, the day that was supposed to be for Harper, I realized something. They never planned to celebrate me. They were just waiting for Claire's spotlight to shine again. I stood, slowly. My hands were sticky with frosting. The back of my shirt clung to my skin. No one noticed. And that was the moment the plan I'd quietly been building stopped feeling like an idea. It became a decision. I didn't leave the party. Not right away. I stood in the kitchen for a while, pretending to clean, pretending not to notice how everyone else had stopped pretending at all. The music thumped through the walls like a second heartbeat that didn't belong to me. Claire was holding court in the living room, telling stories about her campus visit, mimicking her future roommate's accent. David laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd heard in years. My cake? Still untouched. I remember rinsing the cloth I used to wipe up the frosting, holding it under the tap too long, watching the raspberry red spiral down the drain, like a metaphor, too, on the nose to say out loud. Marla walked by with a tray of plastic cups and said, "We'll do the cake later, once things calm down," but later never came. I went to my room, not out of anger, not even sadness, really. I was empty, like I'd poured myself into this day and someone had casually knocked the glass over. I sat on the edge of my bed, my feet swollen, my back aching, one hand on the soft swell of my belly, where Harper stirred gently beneath my palm. She deserved better. I opened a folder on my phone, one I'd been adding to quietly for weeks. Screenshots, scanned documents, photos of receipts, legal forms. I had been patient, dutiful. I let them move in temporarily after I bought the place. Let them call it our apartment, even though the deed had one name on it, mine. They never offered rent, never asked about bills. They used my space like they used my silence. David once told me I was lucky to have parents who let me stay home during the pregnancy. As if I wasn't paying the mortgage. As if I hadn't fronted the utility bills for the last 2 years. As if I hadn't paid off Claire's first tutoring contract, while skipping my own health insurance for 3 months. When I told them I was going to be a father, Marla blinked and said, "Oh, that's happening." David's only question was whether the mother was still around. When I said no, he nodded like it made sense, like he expected that from me. Claire laughed when they told her. She was dipping a chicken nugget in barbecue sauce and said, "Guess we'll have to baby-proof the Xbox." They always treated my life like a side plot. But the problem with side plots is sometimes they grow teeth. I sat there, listening to the party morph into something completely unrecognizable. The streamers I hung were drooping. My dad-to-be sign had been pushed to the corner, replaced by a hand-drawn banner. Someone taped to the wall, "Congrats, Claire," in glitter glue. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just got up, quietly. The next morning, I woke up at sunrise. The kitchen still reeked of soda and half-dried cheese dip. Someone had left their shoes on the counter. The trash bin was overflowing. Claire's playlist was still connected to the Bluetooth speaker, now quiet but still linked. Her name on the screen like a signature across my piece. I boiled water for tea and laid out 3 neatly printed letters on the kitchen table. Each one addressed, each one signed, David, Marla, Claire. At 7:03 a.m., I heard slippered footsteps dragging across the hallway. Marla entered first, hair wild from sleep, muttering about her coffee. She stopped cold. "What's this?" she asked, picking up the top letter. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She read. Her eyes widened, her mouth opened, then closed again. "Ethan." "What? What is this?" she said, louder now. David shuffled in next. Claire followed, yawning. "She's evicting us," Marla shouted. "He's evicting us." I looked up from my tea. "You have 30 days. I said it clearly, calmly. It echoed like thunder. "This is a joke," David said, grabbing his copy. "You can't be serious. This isn't legal." "I sent certified copies yesterday," I replied. "This is just a courtesy version." "You're throwing your family out?" Claire said, staring at me like I had grown a second head. "Over one party? One party?" I stood. "You turned my celebration into a frat night. Let strangers into my home. Played music so loud I couldn't hear myself think. Let them trash my apartment while I wiped frosting off the floor like a hired janitor." "We were celebrating," she snapped. "No," I said. "You were celebrating yourself. Marla moved around the table like she was going to block me. You're being dramatic. This isn't just your place. We've lived here for years. You've stayed here, I corrected. You've contributed nothing. David lifted his hands, mediator style. Let's all take a breath. This is just emotions talking. You don't mean this. I laughed, soft, almost pitying. This isn't emotions. This is the result of years of being erased, of paying the bills while you called me ungrateful, of cleaning up while Claire got standing ovations for existing. Claire slapped the table. The letters slid. You've been waiting for this. You planned this. Yes, I said. I have. David blinked like he'd just seen me for the first time. You're kicking your family out for what? A moment? It wasn't a moment, I said. It was every moment. This just made it obvious. Marla collapsed into a chair, tears welling. Where are we supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. Claire narrowed her eyes. You're not serious. You'll change your mind. I didn't reply. I simply reached into the drawer, pulled out a folder, and placed it on the table. Inside, copies of the deed, the certified mail slips, the legal notices already filed with the city. Claire picked it up and flung it across the room. You're heartless, she spat. No, I said. I'm finally protecting mine. Silence fell. Not the tense kind, the final kind. I looked at the mess they'd left. The bent party streamer, the cake that no one ate, the torn corner of Harper's banner. It wasn't mine to clean anymore. I want you out by the end of the month, I said. If you need help packing, I've arranged for a friend to assist. They didn't respond. They just stared. I turned, walked past the damage, and back to my room. Harper kicked gently beneath my ribs. It was the first time I felt free in years. The first 3 days were quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that tastes like tension thin in the air, bitter at the edges. No one mentioned the letters. No one tried to talk. Claire stopped blasting music from her room. Marla stopped pretending to tidy the kitchen, though she never truly cleaned it to begin with. David sat on the balcony for hours, nursing the same cup of coffee he barely sipped. It was almost eerie, like the house itself had entered a mourning period. I moved through the space like I didn't live there anymore, like I was just a ghost waiting to be released. But I knew the silence wouldn't last. It never does. On the 4th day, the calls started. First, Uncle Ted, then Aunt Rachel, then a friend of Marla's from church, who hadn't texted me since 2018, suddenly wrote, "Hey, sweetie, just checking in. We're really concerned about you." Concern. Right. I could already picture it, Marla dialing numbers with shaky fingers, recounting the same rehearsed lines. Ethan's overwhelmed. Ever since the baby news, he's not thinking clearly. He's under stress. Hormonal, maybe. They used pity like a scalpel, thin, sharp, and deliberate. On day 5, David approached me in the hallway. He didn't knock on my door, just waited by the thermostat, as if adjusting the temperature had given him the courage. "We'll start contributing," he said quietly. "Rent, utilities. We should have done that earlier. You're right." It sounded like a peace offering, like pennies tossed in the direction of a fire they started. "You had years," I replied. "You didn't forget. You just chose not to." He nodded like he agreed, but then added, "Think about how this looks to the rest of the family." There it was. The shame card. Not guilt. Not remorse. Just optics. I smiled and walked past him. I didn't reply. Claire tried a different tactic on day 7. Over dinner, which I didn't join, she loudly mentioned she'd spoken to her Stanford counselor. He said if I defer a year, I might lose my scholarship. This move? It's putting everything at risk. I can't even sleep. I heard the forks scraping against plates, the passive-aggressive silence between bites. I nodded from the kitchen. Tough. Claire's voice rose. "You don't even care, do you?" I turned slightly. "Did you care when I was 8 months from fatherhood, wiping up cake soda with a dish towel?" She slammed her fork down and stormed off. On day 10, I got an email from my business partner. "Hey, just a heads up, someone messaged our company inbox anonymously. They said you might be emotionally unstable and shouldn't be leading the business post-baby. Suggested we consider other options. My stomach dropped for half a breath. Then it settled. I pulled up the email, cross-referenced the phrasing with past messages from Marla, word-for-word phrases. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to my lawyer. On day 12, the gloves came off. Marla cornered me in the hallway, the same place David had tried guilt just a week earlier. I know you think you're strong now, she hissed. But when that baby comes, when you're exhausted and drowning, you'll come crawling back. We'll see how long this little independence act lasts. I looked her in the eye. I already realized I don't need to. The next morning, a sheriff's deputy delivered a court letter to the front door. Eviction filing. Scheduled hearing. Legal copy. Notarized and clean. David opened it. Read the headline. And punched the wall. I didn't flinch. He muttered something about betrayal and taking it too far. But this wasn't far. This was long overdue. By day 21, the guilt monologues had returned louder, more theatrical. Marla sobbed in the living room, the kind of cries meant to be overheard. She listed every perceived sacrifice, letting me live rent-free, cooking dinner twice a week, watching over me during pregnancy. I wore noise-canceling headphones, updated Harper's registry while Chopin played in my ears. On day 25, Claire tried manipulation with Flair. She invited her girlfriend over. I could hear them in the kitchen, intentionally loud. She's ruining everything. She's crazy. She doesn't get how much we've done for her. She's gonna screw up that kid's life without us. I walked in calm, looked at her girlfriend. You were at the party, right? I asked. She nodded, unsure. You served underage guests alcohol, I said, still level. If you'd like, I can forward your name to the landlord and police. Underage drinking, property misuse, noise violation. Her face turned pale. She left 5 minutes later. By day 28, the packing began. Not with drama, but slow resignation. Suitcases in the hallway like misplaced ghosts. One box here, a trash bag there. Progress disguised as clutter. I didn't gloat, didn't smile. I just waited. On day 30, the house was quieter than it had ever been. Half the furniture was gone. Claire's banner, the glittery one, had been peeled off the wall and left crumpled on the floor. The fridge was nearly empty. David didn't say goodbye. He just walked out, suitcase rolling behind him like a leash. Marla paused in the foyer, arms crossed, eyes red. You'll regret this, she whispered. Family is forever. I nodded. Exactly, which is why I'm building one that actually deserves to stay. Claire was last. She stood in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder, phone in hand. You're lucky, she said bitterly. Without me here, there's no one left to blame. I raised an eyebrow. Then maybe I'll finally get some peace. She scoffed, rolled her eyes and walked out. The door shut behind her. Not with a slam, just a clean final click, and the silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was soft. It breathed. I stood in the living room. It looked bigger without their things, brighter somehow. I walked into the nursery, folded Harper's new onesies, placed a soft pink blanket into the crib. Outside, the wind was gentle through the trees. Inside, I was alone, but not lonely. I rested one hand on my belly, and for the first time in years I felt safe, not because someone else made it that way, because I did. 4 years. That's how long it's been since the eviction. Since the banner came down and the glitter flakes finally stopped showing up in the carpet. People say time moves fast once you have a kid. They're wrong. It doesn't move fast. It just stops belonging to you. Harper started preschool last month. She wore a purple backpack 3 sizes too big for her, held her lunchbox like it was a briefcase, and told me she was going to teach everyone how to draw clouds. She's curious, thoughtful, loud when she needs to be. She reminds me of myself, if I'd been raised in a house that made space for softness. We have a rhythm now. Morning walks, evening books, Tuesday pancake dinners. Sometimes I catch her watching me the way kids do when they're trying to memorize the shape of safety. And I think, this is the legacy I care about. The business survived. More than survived, actually. I never had to shut it down, not even during the newborn nights, when sleep came in 90-minute shifts and bottle sterilization felt like a part-time job. I hired 2 employees last year. One works remote from Oregon. The other brings me muffins from her aunt's bakery on Fridays. We hit 6 figures for the first time last year. I didn't throw a party, but I did buy a new vacuum. A really good one. I work less now. Not because I have to, but because I can. There's margin in my life. Space to breathe. I never called them. Not once. And they never reached out. No apology, no olive branch, just silence. But families talk. Weddings. Funerals. Vague Facebook updates. People whisper. Apparently Claire dropped out during her second semester. Couldn't keep up. Something about not knowing how to manage deadlines without someone reminding her. David and Marla moved in with Uncle Ron for a while. Didn't last. He kicked them out 6 months later, something about unpaid bills, and Marla yelling at his wife over what brand of paper towels she bought. I'm told they're not doing well. And no, I don't feel good about that. But I don't feel guilty either. They had chance after chance. And all I ever asked for was the bare minimum: respect, effort, a moment to be seen. When they couldn't offer it, I stopped offering myself. People love to say family is unconditional, but I've learned something different. Love might be unconditional, but respect? That's earned. That's chosen. And sometimes, choosing yourself means walking away from the people who taught you to shrink. Now, our home is small but warm. There's artwork on the fridge, and bubbles in the sink, and toys underfoot that I trip over daily. Harper loves string lights and window sun catchers. She asked me last week if we could paint stars on the ceiling. I said yes. We're doing it this weekend. Last Tuesday, she looked at me with peanut butter on her nose and said, "Dad, are you happy?" I didn't expect the question, but I answered it honestly. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am. Not because everything is easy, not because I won, but because I stopped asking for a seat at a table that was never built for me. We built a new table, and it's just the right size." Final reflection from Ethan. I used to think that peace came from compromise, from being the bigger person, from staying quiet, from not making waves. But peace doesn't live in silence. It lives in clarity, in action, in choosing not to be erased. The truth is, I didn't burn bridges. I just stopped building them alone. I gave them 30 days. They gave me a lifetime of reasons. And Harper? She gives me a future. That's more than enough. Story 2, my name's Nina. I'm 23 in this story. Well, let's just say it starts with a key that didn't work anymore and ends with me locking up my past for good. To really get it though, I need to back up. 4 years ago, I inherited my mom's house. She passed from stomach cancer when I was 18. She was the kind of person who planned everything. The house was hers long before she met my dad, mortgage-free. Well, sorted. Everything lined up. She even sat me down once and said, "This place is yours, Nina. Always will be." She meant it. My parents didn't last. They divorced when I was 9, no dramatic fights, no ugly custody battle, just a silent exit. Dad left, met Melanie not long after, and started over with her. I got a half-brother, Caleb, who's 11 years younger than me. I'd visit sometimes. Awkward family dinners and birthday cards kind of thing. We were all technically family, but it never felt like it. Melanie wasn't cruel. She was just performative. Fake smiles, forced politeness, and always making sure Caleb was front and center. Dad? He was always at work. When Mom died, it crushed me. I was weeks away from starting college out of state. I could barely breathe, let alone think straight. That's when Dad showed up, Melanie and Caleb in tow, saying they'd help me adjust. In my grief, I welcomed the help. They moved in, just for a few months, Dad said. By summer, I was struggling with what to do with the house. Selling it felt like betrayal. Leaving it empty seemed dumb. Then Dad pitched an idea over breakfast. We'll stay here, handle the bills, keep the place up. You focus on school. Melanie chimed in with a smile, flipping pancakes like this was a Saturday morning sitcom. It'll be great for Caleb. He's already enrolled nearby, and you won't have to worry. I won't lie, it made sense at the time. They'd been decent housemates those 2 months. Melanie was polite, even warm. Caleb had started calling me sis, so I agreed. I packed up my mom's keepsakes, stored most of them in the attic, and left for college. For the next 4 years, things were surprisingly okay. I'd come home for holidays, breaks, the occasional long weekend. Melanie cooked elaborate meals like she was trying out for a cooking show. Caleb would show me his drawings or rant about his teachers. We'd decorate the tree together at Christmas. Even Dad tried. We fell into this weirdly functional rhythm. Not perfect, not warm, but stable. Or so I thought. When I graduated, I had a job lined up back in town, entry-level financial analyst. Nothing glamorous, but solid. I was ready to come home, reclaim my space, maybe finally unpack those attic boxes and replant Mom's old rose garden. I pulled into the driveway on a warm June afternoon, heart full of hope, suitcase in hand, and the key didn't fit. Let me repeat that. The key didn't fit. I tried again, then again. Nothing. Confused but still optimistic, I knocked. Melanie opened the door, wearing an apron dusted in flour. She looked like someone's Pinterest dream of homemaking, and also like she'd seen a ghost. Nina? What? What are you doing here? I wheeled my suitcase in without waiting for permission. Dad was in the living room on his tablet. Caleb was sprawled on the couch, mid-scroll on his phone. They looked like they'd just been interrupted mid-vacation. What do you mean, what am I doing here? I live here, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Why were the locks changed? Dad started tugging at his collar, a nervous tick I'd seen 100 times. Oh, right. I changed them last month. For safety. There were break-ins nearby. I blinked. You didn't think to tell me? Or send me a new key? Melanie stepped in, voice overly calm. We just didn't expect you so soon. I literally told you my start date. I graduated last Saturday. Silence. Then Dad stood up, gestured awkwardly toward the hallway. Let's talk in the office. The office. Mom's office. My office. We shut the door. Dad turned to me with a look I couldn't place. Shame, maybe? Listen, kiddo, he started. There's something I should have told you. Melanie thinks this house is mine. I laughed, then stopped. Wait, what? I told her I gave the house to your mom after the divorce, that when she died, it reverted back to me. I didn't want her to feel like she was living in your house. I stared. You let her believe this was your house. For 4 years, he looked everywhere but at me. I was going to tell her. Eventually, I took a deep breath. My fists clenched. She needs to know the truth. He shook his head, desperate. Please, just give me a few weeks. Let me ease into it. We'll find a place and move out. Just don't tell her. Not yet. He handed me the new keys like they were some kind of apology bouquet. I took them, but something inside me cracked. That night, dinner was painful. Melanie kept glancing at me like I was a stranger. Caleb didn't say much. The warmth I'd felt before, gone, frozen over. The next morning, Melanie casually asked when I'd start looking for my own place. Said it was time I spread my wings. I told her I'd spoken with Dad about staying. Her eyes narrowed. Over the next 2 weeks, she morphed into a master of passive aggression. She accidentally dyed my laundry pink, cooked dinner for 3 and forgot I was there, blared the vacuum every time I sat down in the living room, replaced Mom's vase with a neon sculpture that looked like it came from a college dorm sale. Even Caleb changed. The boy who once showed me his crayon masterpieces now rolled his eyes when I walked by. Started calling me that girl when talking on the phone. The kicker? One morning I woke up to a completely silent house. No breakfast smells, no blaring TV, nothing. They were gone. No note, no text, no call. I finally got Melanie on the line after a dozen tries. Her voice was smug. Loud waves in the background. We're in the Maldives, Nina. First-class flights, all-inclusive resort. Didn't mention it because, well, let's be honest, you'd expect us to pay for you. And I've had enough of your freeloading. You're not our responsibility anymore. Then she hung up, just like that. And that was the moment the lock stopped being the most shocking part of this story. I sat there in my mom's kitchen, holding my phone like it had just slapped me. That whole call with Melanie felt like a fever dream. One minute I was half asleep, wondering why the house was so quiet. The next, I was being told to get out of the home I grew up in by the woman who married my dad. And Dad, oh, he was there. I heard his voice in the background, just mumbling something while Melanie ranted. He didn't stop her, didn't defend me, nothing. That silence hit harder than anything she said. When she hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat still, breathing, thinking. Then something flipped. I was done. Done pretending. Done playing peacekeeper. Done giving people grace they hadn't earned. This was my house. I grabbed a notebook and started writing down everything I needed to do. Step 1, get their stuff packed. Every item, every fake succulent, golf club, leopard print robe, middle school art project. I boxed it all. Took me the whole weekend. No breaks. Just music in my ears and pure focus. By Sunday night, their entire lives were sitting neatly in the garage. Labeled, taped, ready to go. Then came the locks. I called a 24/7 locksmith. Guy showed up at 11 p.m., probably expecting some drama. But I was calm, paid up front, tipped well. Watched him install brand new deadbolts on every door, like it was a spiritual cleanse. By the time he left, I was holding a fresh set of keys, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could actually breathe. Monday, I started my new job at Parker and Lyle Financial. First day was nerve-wracking in the normal kind of way. New names, new coffee machine, trying to remember where the bathroom was. Everyone was kind, though, especially Zara, the senior associate who took me under her wing. We grabbed lunch, and she asked where I was staying. My family's place, I said, stirring my iced coffee. Or what used to be a family place. She gave me a look like she knew exactly what that meant. Over the next 2 weeks, I settled into work, got good at running reports, started learning the office culture. It was refreshing to be in a place where people respected me just for showing up and doing the job. Meanwhile, back at home, I cleaned house literally and metaphorically. Got rid of the tacky wall decals Melanie put up, pulled Caleb's posters off the walls, donated a bunch of their furniture, reclaimed every inch of the place, put Mom's vase back on the mantle, hung her framed calendar quote in the hallway, "Don't set yourself on fire to keep others warm." Yeah, that hit harder now. Then Friday came. I pulled into the driveway after work, humming along to some indie playlist when I saw them, Dad, Melanie, and Caleb standing there, like they'd been locked out of paradise. Melanie was already red in the face before I even got out of the car. "You changed the locks?" She snapped, practically foaming. Dad looked exhausted. Caleb stood behind them, awkwardly scrolling his phone, pretending he wasn't part of this mess. "Yep," one said, calm, controlled. "Keys in hand. Welcome home." Melanie stormed up to me. "You can't just lock us out of our own house." I raised an eyebrow. "Funny. That's exactly what you did to me 2 weeks ago." She opened her mouth to scream again, but I turned and unlocked the front door, stepping inside like I hadn't just set off a bomb. She followed me in, ranting about police and theft and how she was going to sue. I turned to face her, fully composed. "Melanie, this house is mine. It always has been. My mother bought it before she even met my dad. She left it to me in her will. You've been living here because I allowed it." She laughed, but it was shaky now. Tell her she's lying, she barked at Dad. And here it was, his moment, his line in the sand. He looked down, then at me, then at her. She's telling the truth, he said, quiet like it hurt to admit. The house was never mine. Silence. The kind that makes the air feel heavy. Melanie blinked. Her expression changed like someone had yanked the power cord. She went from furious to fake friendly in under 5 seconds. Oh, Nina, sweetheart, she cooed. That call, listen, I was stressed, okay? I didn't mean all that. We've had such good times here, haven't we? Christmas dinners, family movie nights. I stared at her. She took a step closer. We're family. We can move forward. How about we figure out rent or something? Make it official? No, I said, voice low and steady. You need to leave. Your stuff's in the garage. You can grab it and go. Her face hardened again. You ungrateful little after everything we've done for you? Dad tried to step in. Princess, maybe we can talk. I cut him off. You stood by for years while she erased my mom from this house. You let her redecorate it, pretend it was hers. You let her believe it belonged to you. Then when she tried to kick me out, you said nothing. I was going to tell her, he mumbled. I just didn't know how. That's the thing, Dad, I said. You never know how. You just avoid and hope someone else cleans up the mess. Melanie was still yelling something about entitlement and calling a lawyer. I walked past her, opened the front door, and pointed. Garage is that way. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. They didn't leave right away. Oh no, they made a whole scene. Melanie pacing, calling her sister, crying to no one in particular. Caleb just looked embarrassed. Dad kept saying, let's not make this worse. But eventually they packed up the car. 3 trips later, it was done. As they were loading the last box, Dad came back to the door. Nina, please, can we talk? I messed up. I know I did. But I don't want this to be how we end. I paused. You made your choices, I said. Now I'm making mine. Then I closed the door. Didn't lock it. Didn't need to. They left. Car packed. Faces twisted, some in anger, some in shame. Caleb didn't even say goodbye. Just slid into the back seat like this was a road trip nobody wanted to take. I watched from the kitchen window as they drove off. The garage was empty now, like their entire existence here had been boxed up and cleared away. And in a weird, bittersweet way, it felt like mourning all over again. But this time, I wasn't mourning them. I was mourning what could have been. I made tea. Just sat on the back porch with the mug in my hands, staring at the garden. The roses were in bloom again. Mom's roses. Pink, wild, a little uneven but real. She would have been proud, not because I kicked them out, but because I finally stopped shrinking myself to make room for people who only took. That night, the house was so quiet, it felt almost unreal. I could hear the hum of the fridge, the tick of the old wall clock, the soft thud of the upstairs pipes. No vacuum at 8 a.m., no doors slamming, no passive-aggressive comments about my cereal habits. Just me. The next morning I went out and bought paint. Soft cream for the walls, deep green for the office. I moved Mom's books back into her shelves, framed one of her old recipes in the kitchen, took down the weird canvas that said, live, laugh, love like it was mocking me. I made the house mine again, slowly, room by room. My coworkers started noticing something had changed. Zara said I looked more settled. I think what she meant was that I'd stopped carrying tension like armor. There was still a lot to work through, though. My phone? It didn't stay quiet for long. Dad called 3 days later. New number. I didn't pick up. He left a voicemail. Nina, please, just give me 5 minutes. I'll come alone. We don't even have to talk about the house. I just miss you. I didn't delete it, but I didn't call back either. Next came the texts. Can we talk? I shouldn't have lied. Melanie didn't mean it. And my personal favorite, let's be a family again. Family? Funny how people only pull that card when they've lost control. For a week straight, it felt like he tried every trick: guilt, nostalgia, promises, silence. One morning I woke up to a handwritten letter in the mailbox. No return address, just my name. It said, "Nina, I made mistakes. I got caught between my wife and my daughter. That's not an excuse, it's a failure. You didn't deserve any of it. I let someone rewrite your mother's story. That's on me. I know I've lost your trust, but I hope I haven't lost you forever." Dad, I sat with that letter for a long time. Read it 3 times. Then tucked it into the back of my mom's recipe book. Maybe one day I'd want to look at it again. Maybe not. In the meantime, I kept living. Work became a kind of anchor. Numbers made sense. Deadlines were predictable. I started getting recognition in meetings. Even led my first client presentation. Zara clapped when I wrapped up. "You're on fire lately," she said. Finally getting to breathe, I told her. Outside of work, one reconnected with some old friends, Layla and Monica from high school. We met for drinks one Friday and ended up laughing until the bar closed. Turns out they'd seen Melanie's Instagram posts from the Maldives. I didn't bring up what happened. They didn't ask. But Layla squeezed my hand as we left. "You seem lighter," she said. "Yeah," I smiled. "I think I am." That weekend, I started something I'd been putting off for years. I went up to the attic and opened the old storage bins. I'd packed the week after Mom died, her scarves, her journals, photos I hadn't looked at since senior year. One notebook had a note on the front in her handwriting, "For Nina, when you're ready." Inside were checklists, ideas, letters she'd written and never sent. "If you're reading this, it means you've come back to the house. Maybe alone, maybe not. Either way, you made it. I hope it still feels like home." I cried then. Ugly, full body kind of crying. Not because I was sad, though I was, but because for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone in that house. Grief is a strange thing. It doesn't hit all at once. It sneaks up on you in quiet moments, in handwritten notes, in the scent of lavender tucked into old boxes. But it also reminds you of who you are and who you don't need anymore. The following Monday, I got a text from an unknown number. "I know I can't undo what happened, but I hope you'll let me fix some of it. Caleb misses you too." I stared at it for a while, and then I turned off my phone, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because some things don't need to be answered. Some silence is sacred. It's been 3 months now. I've painted the entire living room, put up new curtains, and finally planted those rose bushes. Mom always talked about expanding. They're growing wild and soft in the morning sun. I swear, some days they look exactly like they did when I was little. Messy, uneven, full of color. Kind of like me, honestly. I thought once they were gone, I'd feel angry for weeks, maybe even regretful. But what surprised me most was the stillness that came after. No more tiptoeing. No more asking for space in my own home. No more be nice in the back of my head. Just me, my coffee, and the slow hum of a quiet life. Some mornings, I sit on the front steps with a book and watch the neighborhood wake up. Kids on bikes, sprinklers ticking in the grass, the mailman giving me a little wave, and it feels normal, not dramatic, not victorious, just real. That's what healing looks like, I think. Not fireworks, not revenge fantasies. Just a regular Tuesday that doesn't hurt anymore. Dad still tries sometimes. Different numbers. Voicemails that sound tired. Guilty. Even tried showing up once. Left a small box on the porch inside. Was a photo of me and him from when I was 5. Back when he still showed up to soccer games and helped braid my hair. There was no note. Just the picture. I didn't throw it away. I just put it in the back of the hallway closet, behind the winter blankets. Maybe I'll look at it someday, or maybe I won't. But for now, I don't need it. He chose who to protect. I've chosen peace. Melanie, as far as I know, hasn't reached out. No texts, no calls. But she did update her Instagram bio. Something about surviving betrayal and trusting your circle. Classic. I don't care. Let her tell whatever story she needs to tell to sleep at night. The truth is, she never wanted a daughter. She wanted a house, a trophy life, a family photo where everything looked good from the outside, even if it was rotting at the core. What she forgot is, I'm my mother's daughter, and my mother planned for this. She gave me this house not just to live in, but to stand in, to grow in, to fight for if I needed to. And I did. It's funny how people say, blood is thicker than water, like it means something. But I've learned, it's not always about blood. It's about who shows up when everything falls apart, who honors your silence, who doesn't ask you to shrink just so they can feel bigger. Sometimes the most loyal thing you can do for yourself is to let them go. I've made new routines now. Work's going well. I've even started hiking on weekends, something I never had time or space for before. There's a trail behind the house that leads to this little hill where you can see the whole town. When the sun sets, it feels like the world exhales. I like to sit there and talk to Mom, not out loud, just in my head. She always listens. Sometimes I tell her about my day. Sometimes I tell her about the stupid jokes Caleb used to tell. Sometimes I just sit and say nothing. She'd get that. She was never afraid of quiet, and I think she'd be proud not just that I kept the house, but that I kept myself, that I didn't break trying to make other people feel whole, that I stopped begging to be loved the way I deserved. The thing is, I used to think strength looked like confrontation, like standing on a table and screaming my truth. But now I know it looks like closing a door, locking it, and walking into a room that feels like peace. I don't hate them. I don't wish them harm. But I also don't wish them back. There's a kind of healing that only happens alone. And this house, this home has become part of that. When I water the roses, I don't just think of Mom. I think of the girl I used to be. The one who thought love had to be earned. The one who stayed quiet to keep things easy. The one who gave people more chances than they ever gave her. She's still here, but she's stronger now. She's me, and we're okay. Because in this house, finally, no one has to leave to feel at home. Story 3. My name's Riley. I wasn't exactly what you'd call a planned addition to my family. My parents had my sister, Ava, when they were in their early 30s and figured they were done. Surprised 10 years later, I showed up. I've lost count of how many times I heard my mom casually say, "We didn't plan for you, Riley," like she was talking about unexpected rain. It wasn't cruel, just casual. That made it worse somehow. If I had $1 for every, if it weren't for your grandparents' story, I wouldn't have needed a scholarship. My mom would always start with that line, then trail off and change the subject. But the message was loud and clear. I was here because my grandparents' guilt tripped them into having another kid. Ava was the golden girl. I was the footnote. She never bullied me. That would have at least acknowledged my presence. No, Ava just floated above me. While the first played with Legos on the floor, she was curled up on the couch talking about college applications and prom dresses. My mom would hand her sad books with a proud little smile, and I'd sit at the kitchen table pretending. I didn't need help with fractions, but there was one place where I mattered, my grandparents' house. Every morning, after dropping Ava off at school, my dad would swing by their place, hand me off with a, "She's all yours," and drive off like he was passing on a piece of baggage. At first, I thought that's just how things were, but my grandparents? They made me feel like I was the best thing that had ever happened to them. Grandpa would help with math homework, while Grandma made grilled cheese sandwiches shaped like stars. When I skinned my knees, she kissed them and said, "You're our little miracle, Riley." In that house, I wasn't an afterthought. I was loved. Still, every night I had to go home. When Ava left for college, part of me hoped maybe, just maybe, I'd finally get noticed. Like, hey, now that the star student's gone, maybe there's time for Riley? Nope. First day back from school that fall, my mom didn't even look up before saying, "The bathrooms need scrubbing." The chores that used to be Ava's, they became mine. Cleaning, laundry, cooking it was like the house ran on my back. By 14, I was cooking dinner. It wasn't even a discussion. One day my mom just stopped. She dropped her keys, kicked off her heels, and said, "We expect dinner on the table when we get home." No thanks. No teaching me how. I Googled spaghetti and hoped for the best. That first meal was mushy, but they ate it in silence. Then my dad said, "Try chicken next time." Not good job. Not thanks. Just instructions for the next round. At night, I'd crawl into bed and escape into college websites. I'd imagine walking across a campus that felt like it was mine. Somewhere that didn't smell like Clorox and burnt pasta. And then Ava came back. She strolled in one Sunday, glowing like a wedding commercial, dragging her fiancé, Alex, behind her. "We're engaged," she squealed. It was like someone had shouted free money in Times Square. My parents went nuclear with excitement. Tears, champagne, immediate calls to relatives. "We'll pay for it all," my mom declared. And they did. Flowers, a designer dress, a venue with chandeliers and valet parking. It was the royal wedding nobody asked for. I stood in the corner and watched them throw money around like they were printing it. My grandparents were there, but I caught Grandma frowning at the ice sculpture shaped like swans. Grandpa just shook his head at the chocolate fountain. 2 years later, I had my moment. I laid out 3 college acceptance letters on the dinner table, like I was dealing a winning hand. All my top picks, perfect grades, volunteer hours, late nights. All me. "That's nice," my mom said, not even looking up from her baked chicken. Then, "But we can't afford it." They drained everything for Ava's wedding, even took out a loan. But you paid for her college too," I said. "That was different," my mom replied. "We saw potential in her." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there while they chewed through my dreams like dinner rolls. That night, I packed a duffel and walked out. I didn't slam the door or leave a note. I just called Grandma. 20 minutes later, I was wrapped in her arms. Grandpa handed me a manila folder stuffed with bank statements. "We've been saving since the day you were born," he said, "just in case your parents pulled something like this." They covered everything: tuition, books, dorm supplies, even a used car. When I told my parents I was moving out, they barely flinched. "If that's what you think is best," my mom said, like I was announcing I'd switched brands of toothpaste. College? It was freedom. I chose finance, mostly out of spite. Watching my parents light their money on fire made me want to understand every dollar I touched. By sophomore year, I had a paid internship at a local firm and a growing confidence that I was good at this. Really good. Ava? Not so much. Grandma told me during one of our Sunday calls that things weren't going great on her end. Alex couldn't keep a job. Ava's marketing career was more like occasional freelance gigs that didn't pay. They'd moved in with my parents and were constantly asking for money. My mom, she gave it, emptied her retirement account to cover their rent. I wish I could say I was surprised. By the time I graduated, Ava and her husband had taken over my old room, the same one I used to hide in to dream about escaping. The irony wasn't lost on me. Meanwhile, I had job offers. Real ones. I picked a mid-sized firm where I could grow, and within a year, I was promoted. I bought a condo. Clean, safe, mine. Then the call came. My grandpa had a heart attack. Gone before I could get there. Grandma followed 2 months later. Planning her funeral, I felt like I was walking through a fog. And then my mom showed up. "Need help?" she asked softly. I wanted to say no, but something in her voice, maybe exhaustion, maybe guilt, made me nod. We planned together, quietly. She told me Ava had twins now, 4-year-old boys. They were struggling. Everyone was struggling. Then came the will. Grandma and Grandpa left the house and $150,000 to me. Everyone else got nothing, not even Ava. My parents looked like they'd been sucker punched. Mr. Dalton, the lawyer, read a personal note from Grandpa. "Remember, Margaret, we gave you $200,000 when you needed it. This is our final decision." And just like that, I owned the house they all assumed was theirs. Later, in the parking lot, my mom pulled me aside. "We were counting on that house, Riley," she said. "We thought, well, we assumed." "You assumed wrong," I replied. It's strange how grief and clarity can arrive at the same time. Losing my grandparents hit harder than I expected. I knew they were getting older, but I guess part of me believed they'd always be around, because they always were. Through every scraped knee, missed birthday, ignored achievement, they were the constant. Now, they were gone. The only comfort I had left was knowing they'd left me the one thing that truly felt like home, their house. And that house came with something else, a not-so-small storm waiting to hit. After the will reading, my parents didn't talk to me for a few days. Then the texts started. First it was, "Can we talk?" Then, "We didn't know they'd do that. It was never about the money." Sure. Next came Ava. She emailed me a letter. Yes, a literal letter. Like it was 1999, pouring her heart out about how hard things had been. How she and Alex had counted on that house. How the twins needed a yard to run around in. How Grandma and Grandpa probably didn't mean to cut them out like that. It was almost funny. They wanted me to believe two people who knew every detail of my life, who had funded my college behind my parents' backs, accidentally left me their house and money. Right. The real kicker? Ava signed the letter. "Love, your big sister. Big sister. The same one who used to walk past me like I was furniture." I didn't reply. Instead, I started fixing up the house. Quietly. Slowly. Every chipped cabinet, every worn floorboard. It was like patching up an old wound. I didn't even know if I'd live there, but it was mine. That was enough. And then, out of nowhere, I got a call from my mom. "Dinner this Sunday," she said. "Just us." I almost said no. I almost didn't even pick up. But curiosity got the better of me. When I showed up, the old house looked tired. The siding was cracked, and the lawn was basically a weed graveyard. Inside, it smelled like leftover takeout, and too many people living in too small a space. Ava's twins were screaming over a video game. Alex was on the couch scrolling on his phone. Ava gave me a quick nod, like I was her coworker, not her sister. Dinner was awkward. My mom tried. She made roast beef, AVA's favorite. "That's not mine," I said. "Oh, right," she mumbled. "What is your favorite again?" That hit me harder than I expected. They raised me. I cooked half the meals in that house growing up. And yet, they didn't even know something as basic as my favorite food. But I played nice. I answered their questions about my job, my condo, my boss. They asked. I answered. It was weird, honestly. Like they were just now trying to get to know me. 20 years too late. And then something strange happened. We started doing dinners more often. Holidays. Birthday parties for the twins. It wasn't magical. It wasn't a tearful reunion or some cheesy family healing arc. But it was something. And slowly, something else happened too. I started helping them. It started small. Replacing the busted stove. Paying for a plumber when their pipes exploded. Then it was a new roof. Repainting the house. Getting them a working water heater. Every time, they thanked me like I was a saint. "You're too good to us," my mom said once, hugging me so tight it made my chest ache. She wasn't wrong. I was too good to them. But some part of me still wanted to believe people could change. Or maybe I just needed to stop being angry long enough to heal. Years passed. I moved up at work, got promoted again, bought a better place, started thinking long-term, retirement accounts, investments, real estate. Then one Sunday my dad groaned as he stood up from his chair. The way he held his back, the way my mom shuffled around the kitchen, it all hit me at once. They were getting old, and suddenly I felt this weird mix of guilt and compassion. Not the kind where you forgive and forget, but the kind where you understand people are flawed, deeply flawed, and sometimes you still help them anyway. That's when I brought it up. "This house isn't working for you anymore," I said. "What do you mean?" my mom asked, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "I mean, It's falling apart. It's not safe. Too many stairs. It's time for something easier. I want to buy you a new place. They blinked at me like I'd just handed them $1,000,000. We couldn't let you do that, my dad said, but I could already see the hope on his face. I didn't argue. I just said, let me help. So we house hunted. Weekends spent touring ranch-style homes. Wide doorways, quiet streets, small backyards perfect for two aging people and a pair of chaotic grandkids. We found it. This charming little house with a peach tree in the yard and enough sunlight to make you feel warm, even in winter. I paid in full. Quietly, no mortgage, no loans. Just wired the money and got the deed sent straight to my name. I figured I'd gift it to them officially at the housewarming party they were planning. They were thrilled, talking nonstop about color palettes and garden gnomes. My dad even said, "We're throwing a party, Riley. You deserve to be celebrated too." I smiled. I should have known better. Weeks passed. No invite. No text. Just vague. "We're still planning it" comments anytime I asked. Then one night, I couldn't sleep. Something felt off. So I did what no one wants to admit doing. I checked Ava's Facebook. There it was. A post from that day. "So excited for Mom and Dad's housewarming this Saturday. Can't wait to show off their beautiful new place." I sat there for a full minute, just staring. There were pictures, balloons, catering, people the first recognized from old holiday photos, aunts, cousins, family friends, all tagged, all RSVP'd, all invited, except me, the person who paid for the damn house. I closed the app, sat in silence. Then I stood up, grabbed my keys, and drove. Didn't even have a plan. I just knew I needed to see it for myself. When I got there, I parked down the street and walked. I could hear laughter from the backyard, music playing, someone clinking glasses. From the sidewalk, I could see through the windows, guests milling around, Ava and Alex chatting, kids running between adults. And then I heard it. My dad's voice, loud and proud. After years of saving and hard work, we finally got our dream home. And then my mom chimed in. And Ava was such a huge help with the down payment. She's always there for us. I stood there, blinking. My heart didn't drop. It didn't break. It just turned cold. That was my cue. I walked straight to the front door. It was unlocked. Of course it was. Everyone they wanted was already inside. I stepped into the living room like I belonged, because I did. People looked up, surprised. My dad's face went pale. "Riley?" he said, the fake smile still frozen on his face. "Didn't expect me?" I said, calm as anything. They were silent, frozen. "This party's for the house I bought, right?" I said, louder now. That's weird, because I never got an invite. My mom opened her mouth, probably to say something about a mix-up or a late text that never sent. I didn't let her speak. Instead, I pulled the folder out of my bag. Thick, official, notarized, everything. "This is the deed," I said, holding it up. "My name's on it, not yours. You live here because I let you, and now I'm rethinking that." Dead silence. Someone whispered, "Wait, what?" My mom stepped forward. "Riley, please, don't make a scene." "No," I cut in. "This is the scene. You threw a party in a house you don't own, thanked the wrong daughter, and pretended I didn't exist. Again. And then, with the calmest voice I've ever used in my life, I said, 'Everyone out. Party's over.' You ever watch a room drain of energy? That's what happened after I told everyone to leave. People stood there frozen, clutching half-full wine glasses and awkward paper plates, unsure if they should laugh or pretend they hadn't heard me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The calm in my tone carried more weight than any scream could have. "This is my house," I said again. "And tonight, you disrespected that. You disrespected me." My dad tried to play it off. "Come on, Riley. Don't do this in front of everyone." "No," I said louder now. "You already did it. I'm just answering back." And that was that. People shuffled out slowly, murmuring apologies that weren't really for me. Ava gathered her kids with this look like I had ruined everything. Alex avoided eye contact, like the coward he's always been. When the last car pulled away, I stood in the living room and took a deep breath. My house, finally quiet. My mom lingered, eyes red, hands wringing like she didn't know what to say, or maybe didn't know how to lie anymore. "You really going to kick us out?" she asked, voice small. "I haven't decided," I said honestly. "But let's be clear. You don't get to decide anything anymore." I left that night without another word. Next morning, I emailed them a formal notice. 30 days. Not an eviction, not yet, but a reminder, a line in the sand. You don't burn bridges and expect to keep crossing them. For a while, I didn't hear anything, just silence. No texts, no guilt-ridden calls. But then came the letter, handwritten, folded neatly, my mom's shaky script on the front. Inside, it wasn't apologies. Not really. Just stories about when I was little. A drawing I made of her when I was 6. How my laugh used to echo through the halls. How she remembered my favorite cereal, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and regretted never buying it. I read it twice, then I filed it away. Some things are too little, too late. A memory is not the same as love, and remembering someone doesn't mean you valued them when it mattered. I sold the house a month later. Didn't even flinch. I knew Ava and her crew had already moved back in with my parents. Probably expected me to cave or give in out of guilt, but I didn't. I sold it clean, wired the money into a quiet account, and kept it moving. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't make a scene, I just walked away. After that, life got quiet. No more forced dinners. No more hollow phone calls. Just peace. And for the first time, I really started building my life. I bought my own home. One with tall ceilings and big windows and a little patio garden. I started investing, not just in stocks, but in myself. I built a portfolio, paid off my car, started saving for the kind of future I didn't know I was allowed to dream about when I was younger. A future where I didn't have to earn someone's approval just to exist. I got a dog, a rescue mutt with floppy ears and a bark bigger than his body. Named him Atlas because he carries no weight but his own. Some nights I sit out back, wine in hand, Atlas asleep by my feet, and I wonder how different it all could have been if they'd just seen me. Really seen me. But I don't dwell on that too long, because here's the thing, I made it anyway. And that's what matters. One day, maybe I'll have kids. And if I do, I'll love them before they prove anything. I'll make their favorite meals and remember their worst days and celebrate their best ones. I'll never let them feel like an afterthought in their own home, because I know how that feels. And I swore it ends with me. I don't need revenge. Not anymore. My life is the closure. Let them sit in a house I didn't buy. Wonder why their texts go unanswered. Scroll old pictures and try to remember where it went wrong. I remember, and I'm not looking back.